In the quiet of the night, when the world had gone still, a voice began to echo in the heart of a young believer. It was not the sound of thunder or the whisper of the wind, but something deeper, a fire burning from within, carrying a weight so heavy that it could not be ignored. "You have come to the final test," the voice declared, "and until you pass it, nothing will move." These words were not spoken to frighten, but to awaken. For those who were set apart, those whom God Himself had chosen, this was the turning point. It was not just another trial, not just another obstacle. It was the test that would determine whether destiny would open like a palace door or remain locked behind walls of delay. The young believer, whom we shall call Elias, had long prayed for breakthrough. His prayers often ended in tears, his faith pressed down by repeated disappointment. He wanted to move forward, but every effort led him back to the same barren ground. And then came the realization. This was no ordinary struggle. This was the test, non-negotiable, unskippable, unavoidable. Until it was passed, nothing would change. It was as though every path led him back to the same mountain, the same wilderness, the same silence from heaven. Elias remembered the stories he had read since childhood. There was Joseph, a boy given dreams of greatness. Yet before the dream could be fulfilled, Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and wrongfully imprisoned. He was tested in ways that crushed the body but refined the soul. Why? Because the palace was not ready for Joseph, until Joseph was ready for the palace. The test was not punishment, it was preparation. There were the Israelites, rescued from Egypt by mighty miracles. But when they entered the wilderness, they doubted, complained, and refused to trust the God who had parted the sea for them. Their failure in the test condemned them to 40 years of wandering. And then there was Jesus Himself. Before He began His ministry, He was led into the wilderness to be tested for 40 days. Hunger gnawed at Him, temptation pressed upon Him, and the enemy mocked Him. Yet He endured, for without the wilderness, there would be no cross. Without the cross, no resurrection. Without the resurrection, no victory. Elias trembled as he realized the chosen must always pass through fire. The test was not meant to destroy, but to refine. Elias began to see his struggles in a new light. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every night of wrestling was fire, not a fire of punishment, but a fire of purification. "I have refined you, though not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction," the scripture declared. Elias could feel the flames burning away his pride, his fear, his doubt. It was painful, yes, but it was also necessary. The blessing he had prayed for was heavy, and without strength of faith, it would crush him. God was not only preparing the gift, He was preparing the vessel to hold it. There were moments when Elias wanted to give up. He had faced this mountain before, prayed for a breakthrough before, and yet found himself in the same wilderness again and again. But then he understood, every return to the wilderness was not a punishment, but an unfinished lesson. Until he passed the test, he would walk in circles. The cycle was meant to break him free, not bind him further. The voice of God whispered, "Do not despise this season. The wilderness is not your destination, but the pathway to your promise." So Elias began to change. When his heart screamed to quit, he held tighter to the promises of God. When fear rose like a storm, he whispered words of surrender. "Jesus, I give myself to you." It was no longer about his strength or wisdom. The test was about faith, about trust, about willingness to endure. Slowly, he began to see that transformation was more important than blessing, and character more precious than success. Every trial became a chisel shaping him. Every delay became a furnace refining him. Every disappointment became a lesson teaching him endurance. One night, with his hands lifted high, Elias prayed differently. It was not a cry for escape, but a declaration of surrender. "Lord, I no longer ask you to remove the test. Instead, refine me in it. Burn away my fear, my pride, my doubt. Shape me into one who can carry your blessing without being crushed. Make me ready for the palace you have prepared." As he prayed, peace settled over him. The fire did not go out, but the flames no longer felt like destruction. They felt like transformation. And then came the whisper again. "Pass this test, and everything will change. The doors will open, the blessings will flow. The dreams you thought were lost will rise again. But greater than all of this, the person you become will carry a faith unshakable, a heart unbreakable, and a spirit unstoppable. Elias finally understood. The final test was not about receiving something, it was about becoming someone. On the other side of the wilderness was not just a blessing, but a destiny. Not just an answer, but a transformation. This story is not Elias's alone. It is the story of every chosen one. The test is non-negotiable, for it is the bridge between who you are and who you are called to be. To the chosen, the wilderness is not abandonment, but preparation. The fire is not punishment, but refinement. The silence is not neglect, but the sound of God shaping your soul. And though the test is hard, heaven backs you. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead dwells within you. The question is not whether you have the strength, but whether you will surrender and trust. So Elias rose the next morning not with fear, but with faith. The fire still burned, the test still raged, but he walked with a new confidence. For he knew that when the furnace had finished its work, when the wilderness had completed its course, he would emerge as one ready for destiny. The palace was waiting. The promise was near. The final test was his pathway to glory. And as he stepped forward, he whispered the truth that burned within him. This test will not break me. It will make me. For I am chosen, and I will rise.